Hi everyone, welcome to Build with Shidis. Today we are going to discuss about AWS regions and availability zones. So what are AWS regions and availability zones, you may ask? So let's cover these topics one by one. So AWS regions are a collection of two or more availability zones, and the collection of these zones are known as AWS regions. Now you may ask, then what are availability zones actually? Well, it's very simple. Collection of two or more AWS data centers is called an AWS availability zones. Collection of these availability zones is called AWS regions. As simple as that. Now let's try to understand these regions and availability zones with the help of a diagram. So we've got the AWS cloud. Within this cloud, we might have an AWS region. Let's say, for example, it's Asia Pacific South 1, which is AP South 1. Now, within this region, you'll have a collection of availability zones, like we mentioned before. So, these three availability zones that you can see in the diagram: availability zone 1, availability zone 2, and availability zone 3 are all a part of this single AWS region called AP South 1. Within these availability zones, we've got data centers. And when we create any type of resource, for example, in this case, if it's an Amazon EC2, it's created within that availability zone in one of the data centers that it might have. So that's all about availability zones and regions. The next question that you might ask is, why do we have this complex architecture? Why do we have Amazon regions and availability zones? Well, to answer that, we need to understand the reasons for having these. And the main three reasons for having these is: first, high availability; second, fault isolation; and third, disaster recovery. So let's talk about high availability. For example, if my app is hosted on three data centers rather than one data centers, and there is a power outage in one of the data centers, then still my app will be hosted by the other two data centers, which increases the availability of my application to the end user, and that is what is known as high availability. Second, fault isolation. Just like I mentioned, if I've got an application that is hosted on three data centers or two availability zones, let's say, then even if one availability zone is going through some kind of a fault, the other availability zone still is active in that particular region. And because of that, my app is still available to the end users. They might not even understand or know what happened in the back end. So that's the reason for fault isolation. And third is disaster recovery. For example, I can host my application not just in multiple availability zones but in multiple regions as well. So, for example, if I've got two regions, one in Asia Pacific and one in, let's say, West, then Europe, then what happens is that in case there is some kind of a policy issue or some other kind of a disaster that is happening in Asia Pacific region, then my application, because it's hosted in European region as well, will still be available to the end users. And that's the reason we have disaster recovery and different types of regions available on the cloud, so to ensure that our application delivery is always there for the end users. And that's about it. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you like this video. And don't forget to subscribe the button if you like these videos and you would want me to create more such videos. Thank you.